Now part of the Darkcast Network. Welcome to Indie Podcasts with a dark side. In today's episode, I'm telling you about a case of a one-time public figure's descent to a convicted murderer. This case bridges the gap between the deceptive serenity of public appearances and the sometimes horrible realities of lives behind the lights, behind the social media, behind the cameras. It's the case of the Family Feud contestant, Timothy Bliefnick, right now on Love and Murder. Welcome, lambs. Welcome to a new episode of Love and Murder, your weekly true crime podcast telling you cases of heartbreak that turn to homicide. I am your host, Kai, and in today's episode, we're discussing the case of the Family Feud contestant who murdered his wife. Before we begin, I want to say that this episode is sponsored by my lambs in Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. Without your continued support, Love and Murder would be no more. So I want to say thank you. First of all, before I start the show, be sure to subscribe to Love and Murder right now while you're listening so you don't miss a case. If you didn't know, you can also subscribe to our Patreon so that you don't have to hear intros just like this one or commercials. You'll get Kai rants, bonuses, and you'll be a sponsor of Love and Murder. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. In the meantime, though, grab your butts, grab your BJ's apple juice, murderandlove.com/BJ's, and let's get into some Love and Murder. Timothy Bliefnick and Becky Postle first crossed paths as students at Quincy University, but it wasn't until 2 years after they graduated that they began a romantic relationship. The couple eventually moved in together, got married on September 18th, 2009, and started a family. Becky, at that time, made a significant and very beneficial career change from pharmaceutical sales to become a stay-at-home mom, dedicating herself to her children and her family, while Timothy continued to advance his career in the recycling industry. In the beginning years, their marriage seemed just like a dream, what anybody would want in a marriage. Timothy once said that he envisioned his future where he and Becky would grow old together. He pictured them at 85 sitting on a porch in rocking chairs, just thinking about the life that they had lived together. Well, about 5 years into their marriage, that started to change. Friends and family started noticing changes in Timothy as he became increasingly manipulative and controlling. Despite his public declarations of commitment, at home, he rarely did anything with the family. He didn't help with the household chores. He didn't help with the children. He didn't do anything when it came to being at home, which then ended up putting a strain on Becky. Because believe it or not, being a housewife, being a stay-at-home mother is a lot of work. You don't get time off. As tensions rose in the house, so did Becky's stress levels, but her patience was starting to go down, especially when it came to the kids. And of course, this led to arguments and conflicts within the marriage. On January 21st, 2021, after 11 years of marriage, Timothy filed for divorce. What he put in the divorce papers was that Becky's personality was changing after she decided to go back to school and become a nurse. Other than that, he didn't list anything else in the divorce decree. He just said, she decided she didn't want to be a housewife anymore, so she's going back to school, and I can't have that. Becky, on her part, didn't want to get a divorce. She wanted them to go to marriage counseling, but Timothy said, nope, there's the line that I draw is when you try and make money and be independent. I draw a line there. So they headed to divorce court. And quickly, the divorce proceedings turned contentious with disputes over financing, disputes over the house, disputes over custody with the children. Just literally anything you could think of, they started arguing about. Both Becky and Timothy filed so many court documents during this period. Becky, she wanted sole parental responsibilities of the children, at least temporarily, and Timothy left the house and said he just didn't like Becky's attitude and her behavior since the divorce began. So since I requested a divorce and refused to go to marriage counseling, I don't like her attitude. What were you expecting? Her to kiss your feet? You said you wanted a divorce. The court eventually ordered a temporary 50-50 parenting schedule for Becky and Timothy, and although neither of them was satisfied with this arrangement, it was court ordered. What could they say? Now, this time going through the divorce, severe allegations started to come out. Becky would express fears for her safety, especially to her sister, Sarah Riley, and she kept telling her sister, Sarah, that she feared that Timothy was going to hurt her. For instance, in one text that she sent to Sarah, she said, quote, "If something ever happens to me, please make sure the number one person of interest is Tim, as that is who would do something to me. I'm putting this in writing that I'm fearful he would somehow harm me, come after me, or try to do something to me that takes me away from the kids or the kids away from me. He has already lied multiple times to paint himself as a victim and me as the perpetrator when it's absolutely the other way around. No, I will not send this to mom or dad as I don't want them to be out of their minds with worry." So that's a quote that she sent her sister. Me, if I got a quote like that from one of my siblings, I don't know if I'm not going to send it out because I'm sharing this. I'm sharing it with the police, my parents, my other siblings. Like, I'm not keeping this to myself. That's just me though. Sarah's sister actually told 48 Hours that, quote, "That text was prompted by the murder of one of her colleagues. One of the nurses that she knew was murdered by her partner. So when she found this out, she started looking at what Timothy was doing and what Timothy was saying in a different way and sent this text to her sister." On the morning of February 23rd, 2023, Becky's father was not able to contact her, so he went and visited her house. When he went inside her house, he found Becky's lifeless body on her bathroom floor and immediately called 911. Police came out and they were at the scene at 3:33 p.m. that day. The Quincy Police Department and the Adams County State's Attorney Office quickly responded to the crime scene. Initial assessments reveal that an intruder had forcibly entered Becky's home by prying open an upstairs window in one of the children's bedrooms. This point of entry was marked by like a distinct tool mark on the window frame. You could literally see that the window frame between, when the window meets the actual frame, so you could see the wood cracking in that entry point. Going around the house, investigators also saw a partial shoe print on the carpet, basically showing the path that the intruder had taken into the house. When they went and looked at Becky's body, they saw that she had been shot 14 times. And continuing with the investigation, they found 8 spent 9mm shell casings at the scene. However, although this person broke in and killed Becky, nothing was reported stolen from the home. And also, there were no eyewitnesses to the events of that night. Nobody else was home. No neighbors said they saw anything. It was just the person broke into the house, murdered Becky, and left. Didn't take anything of value. Investigators continued looking throughout the house, and they found small shreds of plastic near Becky's body, which ended up later being identified as an Aldi grocery store bag. What? I don't see the correlation here. Did the person bring a pistol into the house in the Aldi's bag and then did a Terminator move? I don't understand. Finally, they saw pieces of wood from the bedroom door showing that it had been violently kicked in. So maybe she was trying to hide behind the door. Maybe she had locked herself in and was trying to call 911. I don't know. She was trying to get away from this intruder and the intruder kicked down the bedroom door. Police were able to figure out when this happened, and they saw that it happened around 1:11 a.m. And they found that because they did find Becky's phone, which showed that she did attempt to call 911. Wow, that's what I was saying. And on her phone, I think it had said it had like 91123 or something like that. So it was like she was trying to dial. That's when the door got kicked open and maybe her phone got hit out of her hand. So as it's fallen, she just accidentally pressed a couple more numbers. So police have no leads. They have no idea what's going on. However, Becky's sister and her husband, the brother-in-law, immediately suspected Timothy because of what was going on during the divorce because of the text that her sister sent, and they sent all this information over to the authorities. So Timothy became the focal point of their investigation. So during the search for answers of what happened, police were able to see surveillance footage that showed Becky's house from their neighbors' houses who had security cameras set up in their driveway. So her immediate next door neighbor had a security camera, and part of that security camera ran alongside Becky's house. Now, the camera didn't actually capture anything on the night of the murder, but it did capture something unusual about a day earlier. At 1:05 a.m., a person was seen walking down the driveway towards the back of Becky's house. And then what seemed to be the same person was seen again 48 minutes later, this time walking in the opposite direction. So police were like, okay, can we take this with us? And we just want to review this. So in reviewing the neighbors' surveillance videos, they did see that about a week earlier on February 14th, the same thing happened. The same person was seen around the same time walking down the driveway towards the back of Becky's house. And again, around the same amount of time, 48 minutes later, this person was seen walking in the opposite direction. So police wanted to find more surveillance about what's going on at Becky's house. And they went through the entire neighborhood and they were able to find some more surveillance from a house and from a bus stop that showed a person riding a bike in the direction of Becky's house right before the murder, and then in the opposite direction right after. Investigators started to think that the person who was on the bike was the same person that they had seen in the neighbor's driveway videos, because every time the person was seen in that driveway, a person was seen riding a bike down the road just before that. The problem with the surveillance video was that the person seen in them was unidentifiable. Investigators could only say that the bike did not appear to have reflectors on the wheel and the bike was blue. And one day they found this bike. It was just discarded on the side of the road about 1 mile from Timothy's house. It was the same exact bike, blue with no reflectors on the wheels. And I said a mile. I'm sorry. I meant less than half a block away from Timothy's house. After this discovery, along with what Sarah and her husband had told authorities and a couple other things, Timothy was arrested on March 13th, 2023. Now, when he was arrested, it made national headlines because in 2019, 2 years before Tim filed for divorce, he made an appearance with his parents and his brothers on the game show called Family Feud. Now, if you don't know Family Feud, it's an old game show. I think it started, in the 80s? And right now the host is Steve Harvey. With Family Feud, they ask questions like, we asked 10 men, what's the first thing you do when you wake up? And basically the guests have to guess what are the top 10 things that the audience wrote down or chose or whatever. So on his appearance, Steve Harvey had asked him, all right, Tim, we talked to 100 married people. What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding? Where Tim replied, honey, I love you, but I do. Ironically enough, this was the second highest answer on the board. So then 2 years later, he divorces his wife, and literally what you said came true. After his arrest, he did an interview with 48 Hours and said that he was innocent. Quote, the idea of murdering someone, let alone the mother of my kids, is not any part of who I am. On May 23rd, 2023, the trial started and Timothy, again, pled not guilty. Opening statements from the prosecution side with attorney Josh Jones said, quote, the defendant looked down at Becky and he pointed a gun at her and he pulled the trigger. Opening statements from the defense's side, attorney Casey Schneck said that the case was, quote, dripping with reasonable doubt. And just because Becky and Tim were going through a contentious divorce doesn't mean that he killed her. Now, the prosecution's case was built on a timeline of events leading up to the murder. They supported this timeline by the surveillance footage that investigators had gotten and put together. They took this footage and data from Timothy's phone, his fitness band, and the laptop, and established a timeline that was able to pinpoint his movements on the night of the murder. A part of this had his phone turning off and off the grid at 12:28 a.m. and then back on at 2:01 a.m. Surveillance video shows a bicyclist around Becky's house at 2:55 a.m. and her phone calling 911 around 1:11 a.m. Her ADT security shows that her front door was opened at 1:12 a.m. and the bicyclist riding away from the direction of her house at 1:16 a.m. Finally, another weird detail was at 11:51 a.m. on the day of the murder, Timothy called his kids' school to tell them not to let the kids walk to Becky's house. He then showed up at the school at 1:50 p.m., 57 minutes before school let out. Then at 3:03 p.m., he texts Becky's father, Bill Postle, asking him to call her because she didn't pick the kids up from school. He claimed that the school called him saying the kids hadn't been picked up. This, as one tidbit, is actually what led Becky's body being found by her father. Also, the prosecution showed the court that a crowbar had been discovered in Timothy's basement. And in addition to that, they showed the court numerous searches found on Timothy's cell phone, including, quote, how to open my door with a crowbar, and, quote, how to make a homemade pistol silencer, and, quote, how to clean gunpowder off of your hands. Also, they presented spent shell cases found at Timothy's house that matched those that were at the crime scene. This helped to link him directly to the murder. During the hearing, the prosecution presented over 200 pieces of evidence. They were able to show the timeline of the murder as it corresponds to what Timothy was doing at that time, according to all the evidence that they brought forth. The defense, on the other hand, argued that the evidence against Timothy was purely circumstantial and highlighted the absence of his DNA on the bike that had been found near his house. They also said that the searches on his phone could have been conducted after the murder, so you don't know when he was searching for these things. And they proposed an alternate theory of an intruder being responsible for Becky's death. Now, my question to them would have been, why was he searching for those precise terms, even if it was after the murder? Why are you searching for that? Those precise terms with exactly what happened in Becky's murder? That's what you're saying? That's your defense? The defense also challenged the prosecution's reliance on digital evidence and disputed their interpretations of the data presented. They pointed out, once again, this was like the highlight of their whole defense, was that there were no fingerprints or DNA found on the bike or at the house, or when they tested the crowbar, trying to see if it was used for entry, the results came back inconclusive. And the defense also criticized the prosecution's narrative, saying it was merely a compelling story rather than concrete proof of Timothy's guilt. As the trial continued, it got testimonies from 46 witnesses, surveillance video, and digital data extraction from Timothy's devices. So they had his phone, his computer, they had a workout band or whatever that used GPS tracking, and they used all of this in the prosecution's case. And although there was no DNA, there was no actual physical evidence, the prosecution did paint a really good picture of what possibly happened. There was, again, the evidence, I have to say, is circumstantial, but it's like circumstantial? Like, you know? So prosecutors insisted this murder was not committed by a random prowler. Like, seriously, why would they just jump in your house, kill you, leave, all in a span of 5 seconds? They don't know you. They didn't come in to steal. You can't say it was a crime of passion because it's just a random person. So attorney Josh Jones said, quote, "It was an execution. This was somebody who was there with a purpose." After a 6-day trial and over 4 hours of jury deliberation, Timothy was found guilty on all counts, including 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of home invasion. Adams County Judge Robert Adrian said, quote, "Mr. Bliefnick, You researched this murder. You planned this murder. You practiced this murder. You broke into her house and you shot her 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 times. I don't know how long it took you to do that, but some of those shots were fired while she was lying on the ground. And you did all of that while your children were upstairs at your house, lying snug in their beds. The judge said, for all of this, you're saying it's circumstantial evidence, but I'm seeing something different based on the prosecution's case. You, sir, will be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Not only that, there will be no credit for time served or no possibility of release. Man, the judge really just put that hammer down, didn't he? Timothy did not say anything during his sentencing hearing, but the members of Becky's family did speak. Now, you have to think about this. The people who got affected the most was obviously Becky, and then their children. Their 3 children, now does not have either one of their parents. Their mother was murdered and their father's in jail. At the time, the family had put up a GoFundMe page for help in ensuring the financial support of the children's future. And they did thank the community for helping the family while they were going through such a hard time. The children are now in the care of Becky's parents. And she's trying to raise them as normal and as healthy as she possibly could, given what has happened in this situation. And that is the case of the Family Feud murderer, Timothy Bliefnick. What did you think about this case? And in the Patreon, I'm going to post pictures of all of the evidence, of court documents. And also, I found a complete timeline of Timothy's movements as it was portrayed in court. So I'm going to post that also in the Patreon, patreon.com/love and murder. Like I said, part of the benefit of being a Patreon Lamb supporter is that you get case extras. So sometimes the case comes with videos of the hearing. It comes with court documents. It comes with the pictures. It comes with pictures of the evidence, all of that. And everyone in Patreon gets that. So if you want to be a supporter of Patreon and get just these extras also, then go to patreon.com/love and murder and just sign up for the $3 a month donation tier. So the poll question for this case is, do you think Timothy is innocent because of all the circumstantial evidence? Or so he's innocent and there's more than likely another perp out there who had broken into Becky's house and he's the one who did this? Or do you think even though there was no physical hard evidence, the circumstantial evidence was circumstantial enough that it actually did point Timothy as the murderer? It did an excellent and complete job of showing that Timothy was the murderer. So, I'm going to shorten that question, but that's literally the question. Do you think Timothy is actually innocent or do you think he was the one who murdered her? That is the poll question that I'm going to put out for you that you can answer in Spotify, in our WhatsApp group, murderandlove.com/WhatsApp, or you can go to our After the Pod Facebook group. All of the links are in the show notes below. Go ahead and answer that poll question and leave your comments so I can read it out in the next episode. And for the past 2 Sundays, I think I hadn't put out an episode because with everything going on, I was trying to get everything back in order. I was trying to get all the episodes together. Takes a long time to do the research, get everything, blah, blah, blah. So I hadn't put out an episode in 2 Sundays. So I don't have any comments for this Sunday to read, but we're going to start back next week. All you have to do is answer that poll question. Leave your comments in the show notes below. And that is all I have for you today. Don't forget that a free and easy way of supporting Love and Murder is just by simply sharing this episode. Hit that share icon on whatever platform you're on and share it on your social media. Share it in your text messages with your friends, whichever one of your friends love true crime, or whichever one of your friends even loves Family Feud. You can say, hey, guess what? Listen to this story about somebody who was on Family Feud. Share with everyone you know and everyone you don't. Share, 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 share. And as I remind you at the end of each episode, say it with me now. All love and no murder, y'all. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye. Stay tuned after the episode for my commercial guest.
Hello, is this thing on? Okay, good. I am sorry to interrupt your listening pleasure, but my name is Tiffany, and I'm here to tell you about my podcast, True Crime Connections. It's an advocacy podcast that talks with real survivors about real shit. This is the place you want to be if you've been in a toxic relationship or anything tragic has happened to you and you're looking to find your strength and healing. No two episodes are alike, but they all give you useful tools that you can take with you. So make sure to find me on your favorite podcast platform, or you can go to truecrimeconnections.com and come join the hope building community. See you there.